Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here today with Frannie. She's a mindset and a life coach, and I've invited her here today to chat with us because I really feel that mindset is not something that we learn about necessarily when we're growing up. It's not necessarily something that we talk about in schools. It's something that's part of our everyday lives. And yet it's a little bit, kind of out there. We don't really understand what it is. And yet all of us have mindsets. And so I wanted Frannie to be here to create some clarity for us in that department. So thanks so much for being here, Frannie, to talk with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really interesting that you say about, we don't learn it. I feel like that's such a shame that we don't learn it from school age, and that, I'm 37 now and I think about it all the time where I'm like, why have I only just got really good at this at 37? It should just be something that's ingrained in every subject because it does span everything. You can bring it into anything you do, no matter what it is. No matter how challenging it is or not. There's no time that we don't need to have a certain type of mindset to get us through a task. I guess in terms of explaining what it is, I think having a positive mindset can be really misconstrued in that you can think, oh, you just got to think positive thoughts and that's it. And it is not that at all. It's not just thinking happy thoughts and like you're done. For me, it's really about like language, aligning ourselves not only to the language that we use, but how we show up and respond and the energy that we have in something. So it can be like physiological as well as a mental thing that we're doing in terms of mindset. But for me, the biggest and simplest way to explain it, I think, is really shifting always to what you want. Like, what do you want out of any situation? Because we often, and I have this all the time with clients, where I'll ask them what they want and they will start with, I don't. And that is a great example of mindset. It's like, where is your mind set? Like, is it set on what you don't want, what you do want, or just confused, maybe somewhere even in between? So I think the simplest question you can always ask yourself when you're curious about where your mindset is what do I actually want? And don't allow the word don't come into it, even though I've just said don't twice. And how can I align with that? Because sometimes we don't even ask ourselves what we want, especially women. You can even use a really simple example of like, what do you want for breakfast? I don't mind. Well, that's not helpful because you're not really putting out there what you want, and then your brain doesn't know how to help you problem solve based on that, because you're saying I don't mind when you probably do. Everyone does mind. They do have an answer they want to give even if they're not willing. But if we can start to say, what do I want, get really clear on what it is, then our actual subconscious mind will help us get there. When we're really focused on the don'ts, it actually by default helps us get there instead. So what do you want? Where is your focus? And being mindful of where it is in order to get what you want out of any situation.
Yeah, amazing. That's a really great way of breaking it down, and really sort of easy to process and digest. And then, of course, putting that into practice is a completely different task. But just getting clear first on asking ourselves some of these key questions, like all of us want to live the life of our dreams, but what are we doing to take action on that? And I often will explain mindset sort of almost like a lens or a filter, like if you put a blue filter on your camera and go out and shoot, all of your pictures are going to come back with this sort of blue tinge to them because you've put a blue lens on. And so really think about our mindset is this, the filter through which we are taking in the world, and then also from inside out seeing the world, right? And if we're not aware sometimes of what filter we've got in place, it can be completely disempowering and getting in our way without us actually intentionally even knowing it. So yeah.
And with the filter, like we have something at the back of our mind that is called the reticular activating system, and it does exactly that. It is your filter. But the thing we don't realize is that we're in charge of what the filter is. We have the ability to change the filter quite simply, even if our reality doesn't change, even if we're still thinking thoughts we don't want to think. you know, in places and having limiting beliefs and whatever they might be, we still get to choose that filter, because at any one given point, there's thousands, millions of pieces of information coming to us, even worse now with our, or even more so now, not necessarily worse, with our phones. It's the reason I'm on this call and I'm focused on talking to you. I'm not thinking about, oh my God, this is purple and like my clothes are touching me. Like, you delete the things that are irrelevant for what you're doing because you're focused on something. So in my case, talking to you. So if I went away from this conversation and someone said, you know, what's happening over here, I probably won't remember because my brain is deleting it. And it's deleting it because I've decided I'm talking to you and that's important and that's where my focus is. But if my focus is what's going on in the background or what's happening on my phone or something else, that's, my brain would then focus there and help me delete all the other information. So I'd probably ignore you and whatever else. So that's the part that we have control of, is deciding where the focus is and what we want. But often we think we're focusing on what we want, but we're actually focusing on what we don't want. And that shift can be really simple and we don't even realize. But when that shift happens, we start to get really different results, because our mind again is coming back to like, well, I've got to focus on you, so I'm going to do a good job of talking rather than looking around the room, checking what color the wall is and whatever else. So,
yes.
So yeah, that filter we have more control of than we often believe.
Yeah, totally agree. And so, Frannie, let's say that there's someone that's new to the mindset game, which is, let's face it, a lot, like all of us are new to the mindset game at a certain point in our lives. And so there's no right time or wrong time. But let's say that we're just sort of entering into this and our eyes are wide open to this, like, holy moly, I didn't realize that I get to create my reality by changing the filter. And anyway, we won't go too big here because we want to make this user-friendly and accessible. But to someone that's just being introduced to this topic, what do you say to them around what are like the first step or the first two steps that someone can take to just become more aware of this process? And maybe you've already answered it in terms of the questions that you start asking clients, right?
I mean, there's a couple of things. I think first is awareness. So just being really aware of what you're at. So I think that's a great place to start, as you said. And the second is like taking the responsibility of where you're at and not from a place of judgment, because we're judging ourselves all the time. So if we can look at it judgment free, of almost being like, you know, these things are happening to me, it is not my fault necessarily, you know, bad and good things happen to everybody, not taking them personally. So letting go of the judgment, being aware of where you are, and then in order to move forwards, taking that personal responsibility to decide how you're going to react or respond. And often that takes just a second to like be like, assess where you are, that awareness piece. And then I think that the easiest thing often to do is to really like watch your own language, because it's something we can do immediately. We often get caught in patterns with language. So, you know, someone will ask you a question, they know something maybe has happened to you, and you decide you want to tell them all of the bad things. And we think, well, but that's the truth. And of course it is, and that's how we feel. But if we can change our thoughts, and what we actually say, it can really change how we feel about the exact same thing. So I think often, you know, in a society, we want everything to change in an instant. We think that the situation has to change, or the thing we're dealing with has to change, but actually we can do nothing else but change our language, decide to think in a slightly different way about it. So it could be, I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, so I've been trying to buy a house for years in this country. It's literally taken me 7 years to buy a house. Bought a house a couple of weeks ago. But obviously you get in cycles of conversation. How's the house hunt going? And you're like, it's really easy to go, oh, it's impossible to buy a house in this city, and insert all of that. Of course that's true. But it's also true that I just haven't found my perfect home yet. And like, they're two statements. One literally would make me want to puke when I want to like tell everyone it's so difficult, and another one would make me be like, oh my god, I'm actually hopeful, we just haven't found the one. So I guess that's the language piece of like, what do I decide I want to say in reaction to a question, or just to myself sometimes. So I would have to say to myself internally, like, we just have, like, I'm still looking for the house of my dreams, or whatever simple statement that would cut out all the other noise, allow me to use the language that I want, and feel just so much better about the exact same situation that you could call a problem or not, depending on how you're feeling, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good example, and I do share with you that house hunting feeling like you want to vomit when people are asking how it's going. So anyway, congrats on your home.
Thank you.
Yes. But yeah, I was also going to say one thing that, as you were speaking, that occurred to me, again, with just, those two tips, is this idea that, again, because of the self-talk that we engage in, which we're talking about as our mindset, and being very mindful of the things that we're saying, are the words that we're using and the conversations that we're having with ourselves will elicit different emotions. Right.
Yes.
And so just like you just sort of highlighted there, that, on the one hand, if you talk about, oh my goodness, I can't believe how many houses we've seen, oh my goodness, and then that's going to trigger this feeling of overwhelm or doubt, or all of these other things, versus I just have not found my perfect home yet, is sort of like empowering and patient and all of these things. So we can start gaining clarity around our mindset based on the emotions that are showing up. Right. And so sometimes that is,
that's actually a really powerful way of explaining it, because I think we get stuck in the feelings, and if there's anything anyone can take away from this conversation at all, I would say, I would love it to be this one thing, is that our thoughts create our feelings create our actions, and then our actions are usually, our reality. Our reality is a result of those actions. So if you can, like, go back to the beginning and you go to the thoughts, we're often stuck in the feeling phase, and we don't realize how we got there, and we don't think we had any choice about it. And of course, external things happen. I'm talking about completely internally. If you can go back to that thought again, and to use the house as the example, or even right now, like, oh, if I was to say I'm feeling nervous, you can go back to your thought and rewire that and say, I'm calm, I'm at ease, I'm okay, just as a really basic way of addressing how we're feeling moment to moment. And when you get into that thought process of, like, rewiring it, your feelings usually ease, and we have a different action as a result. So yeah, all this to say that I think it's really important to look at our thoughts. Is that something I want to think? Is it creating a feeling that I'm enjoying? No. Okay, so let's go back. And keeping it super simple as well. I'm somebody who has often woken up feeling in the morning, and you're like, why do I feel rubbish already? I've just woke up. So I went through a whole period of, like, literally deciding what my thought was going to be when I woke up, and repeating that in my head until I'd, like, gone about my day enough to, like, feel like, okay, yeah, that's where I'm set today, rather than just taking, oh, I've woke up in this particular mood and that's how my day is going to go. And I think a lot of us do that, or something happens in our day and then that's the situation you get stuck in. So yeah, going back to the thought and choosing it for yourself, empowering yourself in the choice, and keeping it simple as well. You haven't got to address every single thought that comes into your head, more just going back to something that's comforting and aligned with where you're trying to go again.
Amazing. Yeah. And well, I love what you just said there about, deciding that you needed to choose the thought. And again, I really do think that it comes back to, none of this needs to be super complicated, right? It's bringing attention to, here's how I feel. Here's how I want to feel. What do I need to do to bridge that gap? And then start taking action on that. And the brain, as much as it is, like this beautiful gift that we all have access to, again, what we're choosing is either working for us or against us, right? In terms of the thoughts that we're thinking and the feelings that we're feeling. And so, we need to we need to really fine tune this machine and this piece of equipment so that we know that, there's enough obstacles in our external environment that we need to really make sure that we're working with ourselves and for ourselves, and having this power to reframe in this tool. So I think that,
and really, I think, like you said, keeping it really simple is important, because we're overwhelmed and bombarded, and to really bring it back to something simple in order to sort of reset yourself sometimes is just enough.
Yes.
Rather than thinking it's got to be really complicated, I can never think anything negative again. And even like you said at the beginning, the awareness piece is so important, because when we're aware of it, that was actually the biggest key for me, because I was like, oh my God, I'm telling everyone I want to buy a house, but I'm walking around all day complaining about it. How am I getting, why no wonder I'm not getting what I want.
Yes.
And when you're aware of it, you're like, oh, okay. Now I can see what's happening.
Yes. Well, the amount of we do default to autopilot. I mean, it's just human nature, right? Like if we're not controlling the machinery, then we just resort back to whatever story has, this like neurocircuitry and neuroplasticity. It feels like, we're going to resort back to whatever's most familiar. And so just continuing to lock in new patterns and new ways of thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Amazing. And I loved what you were saying before we, as you and I were just chit-chatting before we started the interview about, sort of this tying in spirituality to mindset. And I think that's such a beautiful niche that you've developed in your particular coaching. And I wonder if you could just speak a little bit to that.
Well, I think, there are laws of the universe that exist, like the law of attraction, is probably the one most people are most familiar with. And again, it's like if you're trying to attract what you want, we're attracting it from the vibration that we create, from the words we use, from the energy that those words have. Again, it's like it doesn't take much to figure out what is going to work. To, again, just to use the house as an example, now we've set that again, if I'm walking around all day going, well, I don't like house hunting, it's awful, and then but really I'm saying I want a house. I often like to think of the universe as a menu. If you're going to a restaurant and you're ordering, like, the universe doesn't care what you're ordering, but it's like if you're saying, well, I've got my menu, I want a house, but you're looking all day at the option that says don't get a house, have it be really stressful, and you're looking at that constantly. The universe is the waiter who comes over and says, what do you want? You're like, I want a house. And they're like, but it seems like you don't want to ask. You've done everything to make it look like you want the opposite. So, and it's neutral. It's like everything is neutral. We make things mean something. And that for me is how it ties in spiritually, because we as human beings make everything mean something when actually it's just really quite simple. The universe has its laws. They don't care if you're in a good mood or a bad mood. The laws also don't care who you are, or they don't discriminate. It's just the law is what it is. So we have the power to make the change, basically. So I guess with the universe in mind, or like I do a lot of work with the moon cycle, that there's always a full and a new moon that creates energy. It doesn't care if I'm connecting to it or not. It doesn't care if I believe in it or not. It's still the moon is still circling the earth. Yes. And I know I'm getting kind of niche into some of these energies, but we all see signs. I mean, I got into a lot of this work from seeing signs when I was, like, I don't know, in a very difficult, dark place. And I saw the benefit of like me changing how I was, and the little things that like you're kind of unexplained sometimes, but you're like, oh, that's really comforting. And so I kind of hung on to a lot of that, and then got into it more and more as I've sort of progressed through my coaching. And yeah, I think the law of attraction is the easiest one to understand, that like attracts like. Yeah. So if we can embody what we want to attract, it's the simplest thing we can do. It costs no money, it doesn't take any extra time, and it's really fruitful.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and just thinking about the, the wisdom, right? Like when we think about the universe, and whether it's the moon or celestial bodies or anything, when we feel like there's this wisdom that has pre-existed long, long before us, and will
Mhm.
exist long, long after us. I mean, for some people that might really freak them out, but
Yeah.
for myself, like that is such a comforting feeling that I can find peace in the vastness outside of my own like small lens of my life's meaning, kind of thing, that there is this bigger purpose if I open myself up to it. And so I've also found so much comfort from a place of like, hitting rock bottom, I'll say, and then really realizing like, okay, there's something now missing. There's a piece that needs healing that I wasn't even part of my realm until this anyway, these things happen. But
Yeah.
then being able to realize that things do happen for a reason, and if we allow them, they can take us to new levels and heal ourselves on different planes. And I do feel that one thing with spiritual healing, or anyway, whatever we want to call it, that it does often provide us with ease of presence in this moment when we feel that there's a purpose, like that alignment goes deeper. I know we've got mind body alignment, but then when we take it like one step further, mind body spirit, it does really provide an ability, I feel, to be grounded in the present moment when we have that connection with something bigger, whatever
Yes.
we want to call it. So
And I like what you said about everything happening for a reason, and I think people have like can have like difficult relationship with that. Like if something bad has happened, it's like, oh, so you're saying there was a reason that happened, I can't find one. But it's almost like, for me, connecting the dots back, I believe everything is happening for our greater good. Even if something bad is happening, it's probably protecting you from something worse than that happening, or whatever it might be. And we usually can't connect the dots unless we look backwards. So what I like to think of it in the present moment is assuming that everything is happening for our greater good. What is the lesson we could be learning, or what is happening right now that you could potentially be looking back at in 3 to 6, however many months time, and being like, actually, do you know what? Like, thank God that did happen. No matter what the context is. Because again, we personalize things, and we sort of think, well, how could I think that, because the thing that happened to me was worse than you, or whatever. But it's really not about what it is. It's just the assumption that everything is happening to us is for our greater good. And if we can connect with that and see the gift in it in the moment, then that's really powerful, to be like, okay, there's a reason this is happening, I don't know what it is yet, and I'm going to take the lessons, or I'm going to try and figure it out, and like trust that it's going to be okay in the end. Yeah.
Trust, like that's one of the biggest trust, right?
I
Trust.
have a sweater that says trust the universe. I should have worn it today. But it's true. I really believe that everything is happening for our greater good always. It's just not always easy to see it when we're in it. And often we're so like in our own worlds that we're not even looking at it like that. We're just annoyed that things aren't going our way right now.
Yes, exactly. Amazing. Well, yeah, thank you for shedding light on that, because I do think that is a very unique part of your offering and your specific coaching. So I'm grateful for you to speak to that. And then I guess lastly, Frannie, like for people that are interested in connecting with you or working with you, how do they access you? Where do they find you?
Probably the easiest way to find me is on Instagram. I share a lot on there, which is at Frannie and Co, ANDCO. And yeah, like I have a website, Frannie and Co. Sorry, I stumbled my words there. But yeah, I have several different offerings, one-on-one. I have a group that's running at the moment, and I have, now that we've opened back up, started doing more locally what I call lunar alignment sessions, which is really like a chance to connect with yourself, other people in a group. And I share a lot of the mindset work that I do, but on a sort of really easy to digest way that you can incorporate in the session and take it out into like the weeks and months ahead. And really for me, it's about having time and space in your day, because it's all great to like have these conversations, but like we need to like actually action them into our lives and integrate them into our lives. And often one of our most biggest limiting beliefs is we don't have enough time.
Mm-hmm.
So to do one of these sessions and to have those thought processes and start to bring it into your life is a really easy way to like access what I do. And it's you know, more affordable because we're in a group and you get to connect to other people in a way that doesn't happen so frequently. I was saying to you before that I think we've lost the art of like human connection, conversations about anything that is completely outside of pandemic life and any other sort of stressful hot topic that doesn't do anything for our nervous system. So this is a real place. Well, I like to think all of the work I do is a real place to like connect to yourself and your intuition. And you've just provoked one thought that I forgot to say before, is that really our intuition, I think, is what connects us to the spiritual piece. Because anybody, whether you care about the laws of the universe or spirituality, or you think it's all nonsense, we've all had a time in our life where we've had like a gut feeling about something and it been true, or you know, like we're like, I just knew I had to do this, or I knew that I shouldn't do that, or whatever it might be. And for me, that intuition piece is our spirituality. Mm-hmm. It's our inner knowing, and we have loads of different ways to access it, whether it's religion or a spiritual piece, but it's, in my opinion, within us, and it's connected, sort of what connects our hearts and our minds. So that's the last little thing I wanted to get out there.
Beautiful. Saving the juiciest bit for the very end. Eh?
Yeah, sorry. Cliffhanger, bye.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. This was really amazing. And I do look forward to another one of these when I can pick your brain again. But I really do feel like, yeah, the take home here is that we all have opportunities to mind our mind and grow our awareness and connect some dots and take action and listen to the, you know, that inner knowing. And anyway, so many different beautiful take home messages here. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom with us.
No, thank you. It's been great, and I love to connect with people. So yes, thank you so much.
Yes. Okay. Thanks so much, Frannie. We'll see you soon.
See you then. Thank you.